welcoming Lydia Knight from The Regrets. How are you?
Hello, I'm so good, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too.
I know we had a little snafu, but we made it here, which I'm happy about.
What'd you just say, a snafu?
A snafu. Like we made it here. We were,
I've never heard of snafu.
Yes, it's a very popular word.
I love that. A snafu. That's so fun. Oh my God.
We thought it was over Zoom, but we made it.
conundrum.
We're happy it all worked out. I'm so happy to see you. We had a great hang actually right before the break.
Yes, so good.
And we're going to do some work together. So I'm excited
Yeah.
excited to get into your whole history. The fantastic new record. I told you,
Thank you.
I sent you a text last night. I've lived with the record now since we met.
Yeah.
And the record is unbelievable.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Of course.
Thank
There's so many
you.
great songs. There's so much to get into. But first and foremost, the show is like your history.
Yeah.
This is your life. So let's take it back to the beginning. You grew up all around music, right?
Yes, I did. It's funny because I grew up surrounded by so much music, but not by parents who actually played anything. But kind of every other way that they could be involved in music, except music business, they were. So I was born into a venue pretty much. My dad owned a venue called the Shim Sham Club in New Orleans, and my mom and dad kind of ran it. And so I was just always around like sound checks and stages as a little one.
Like a rock venue, more or less?
Yeah. So they had so many insane bands that had played there, like the White Stripes and I'm pretty sure that the Pussycat Dolls used to also burlesque dance there, which is
that's
so
cool.
crazy. Because they used to just be like a dance group.
Yeah.
And so I was always around that, and I was obsessed with the Ramones and Joan Jett and everything when I was a toddler. And then moved to Santa Monica with my dad, and he took me to a Donna's show. And that's when I was 5. And that's what really, like, seeing that many women on stage, I was like, oh, wait, I can curse, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Go.
fuck, that's what I want to do. I was like, this is the coolest shit ever. And yeah.
Ironically, your first performance, like I started playing drums at 8, but you started performing at like 2. Or you
Pretty
did like a
much.
sound check or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's when I did my little Ramones sound checks at his venue. But the first time I actually performed, I think I was like in my band. I started a band called Lila when I think I was 6 or 7, and we had a show. And yeah, we played 3 songs that were originals in 3 minutes because all of them were about a minute long. And yeah, ever since then, I just have been in bands. Like there hasn't been a time in my life that I haven't been playing music with other people.
When you grow up performing the Ramones at 2, you know you
Yeah.
have good musical taste, right?
Yeah, thank you, parents. Seriously.
And even so, like I mentioned to you, like I started playing at an early age, but you were in bands at like 12 playing South by Southwest, which
Yeah.
is unheard of, really.
Yeah. It's so weird in retrospect now because I've always just been so used to being the young person in like a setting and in a venue and whatever. And now being my age, being 22, I'm like, oh my God, like that is kind of crazy. Like I'm not the little baby anymore. Like other people I'm playing with I'm still the baby in my band.
Yeah.
But in terms of, going to a festival and whatever, like I'm hanging out with people who are 18, 19, and I'm like, whoa. But then I meet like someone like Belinda Linda's or something, and I'm like, what the like that's how people viewed me. Like
Right.
obviously different situation, but like similarly in that way of like, holy shit, that's really cool.
Yeah, so your mom was into music too, like your
Yeah.
dad?
Yeah, my mom just always was. My mom actually made some music. She's like a big metalhead. And so when she was around college age, I think would make music a little bit, but never really pursued it. But
Like metalhead, what was she into? Was she into like Motley Crue, Guns
oh
N' Roses?
yeah.
She
So
was
Molly
into-
Crue, she grew up like going to their shows when she was like 8 and 9 years old, and like all the sort of fucking all of that shit.
Yeah.
Metallica, Guns N' Roses, all the hair metal, and then also like I normally tell her to turn it off in the car. So I love all that stuff, but she's into like some metal that I just haven't really reached my understanding of yet. I hope to one day understand.
I love that. I'll take all that metal all day long. But your parents are actually incredibly supportive because your dad went on
Totally.
to like tour manage your band
Yes.
and direct music videos for you.
Yeah.
So what's that like working with your family in that respect?
It's interesting because growing up, my dad my dad was the primary parent that I had growing up, just because he was who I lived with majority of the time. And so I'm extremely close with him. And he always was like, you're not allowed to professionally do music until you're, I think, at least 16, he said. But then that just clearly wasn't, I think that we learned from each other that there was a way for me to work technically and still be a kid and still have a healthy relationship with him and with my friends and whatnot. And I think that, so we kind of, that rule went out really quickly, but he was never living vicariously through me, which was, I think, the big reason why we maintained such a great relationship. And he also wasn't ever taking money from me. So it was not, we weren't paying him to tour manage. He was just doing that out of the pure kindness of his heart, because that is the worst fucking job.
It is.
Oh my God. It's just so, I could never do it. So he just wanted to work. Like, so he has his own jobs and he would do that from the road and just wanted to make sure I was okay and protect me. And we were so lucky that we had him to do that. Like, that's, I feel like, a very unheard of thing. He just did it to be a good parent.
Yeah.
Which
He's
is
like,
huge.
you can't work until you're 16, but South by Southwest
Yeah,
called,
exactly.
and you're 12, so go
And
do
you're 12,
the gig.
So what are you going to do?
Right.
Exactly.
And then he went on to direct some of your music videos. So, but growing up with your dad, I guess your dad also had great taste in music. So
Yeah.
besides the Donnas, who you actually grew up, and you were
Yeah.
inspired by early on, who else was it that really, was it the Ramones or the
Loved
Pistols?
the Cramps. Loved the Ramones. Loved the Clash. The Cure. I mean, so many classics. And it's also really crazy because he always had a radio station, like an online radio, that would always be the only thing that he had on in the house at all times. So all this music was always playing and I would know these songs. And now, like, getting older and actually learning, like, oh wait, that band, I know this song and I'm like, where do I know it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like with the Replacements or with like XTC and like all these bands that I love now, but I only knew like one or two songs from. It was because of growing up. So he likes to say he brainwashed me, which I guess in ways he did.
I was happy to know that you were a big fan of Live Through This, because that's
Yes.
songs that I've actually gotten to perform quite a lot. So, and you have the tattoo.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
This is my game-changing album for me.
Amazing.
That's due to my mom fully. My
Yeah.
mom is a huge whole person, which
Awesome.
is so cool. You get to do that. I mean,
Yeah, it's
crazy.
pretty incredible and such iconic songs. But are there songs that you grew up like learning how to play on guitar, or you tried to
Yeah.
emulate singing when you were growing up?
Yeah, well, my incredible music teacher is this woman named Lonnie, who really taught me we would learn songs together. A lot of it was like Love Story by Taylor Swift or whatever I was into at the time. But her big thing, and I give so much credit to the reason that I can write music now, was she really taught me how to learn guitar through songwriting and learn how to sing just through songwriting, and sort of, she never gave me like proper vocal lessons. It was just me kind of feeling it out and I mean, the amount of phases I went through in different ways that I would sing and finding my voice. It's, oh God, so cringy to think about being like a little 10-year-old trying to figure it out. But she really let me figure my shit out and learn how to play, through mainly writing.
Mm. So you formed this band at like 12, Pretty Little Demons.
Yeah.
And how do you get picked to play South by Southwest?
I'm pretty sure that I think that my dad submitted us because one of my friends, Grace, who was like my best friend at the time, she had played, or she was a little older than me, and she was playing, or she had played before. And I think maybe her parents told my dad, or she told my dad how they submitted, and then we just submitted and did it. And it was so cool and crazy. Like, because we didn't just go in and do one of the showcases. We did like the full thing that you do when you're a band, and you go and you play like 3 or 4 fucking showcases in a day. And it's a little bit of hell, but also magic. And that is something that I will never, ever forget. It was so crazy.
And growing up all around this, I mean, you must have an interesting view on the music industry because you started playing, even though your dad didn't really want you
Yeah.
playing until you're 16. You really were. It's
Yeah.
incredible that you were doing like these branded stages at South by Southwest at
Yeah.
12, right? So
Yeah.
how are you looking at it now? Now we're years later. This is your third band, The Regrets.
Yeah.
But how do you go? Let's talk about how you met everyone in The Regrets. And
Yeah.
there was even a short stint. It's a story you've told so many times, but you were in the choir of Ryan Gosling's band at some point too.
Yes. So I met The Regrets. Well, I'll say I met one of the members at School of Rock, which is where I also had met Marley, who was the other half of Pretty Little Demons. So shout out School of Rock. But Janessa and I met there with our other original members, Max and Sage. And the three of them were in a band. And
in the school.
Technically, yeah. So they already were in a band and well, we had all met, we all knew each other, and then we all stopped going, or I stopped going. And then a couple years later, my two-piece band, Pretty Little Demons, played a show with their band. And then once that split up pretty recently after, I was like, oh, they're really good. I wonder if they'd ever want to join forces, which we did. And then over time, Max went on to pursue his other band, Lily, which I think you guys, I think that they've
They're
been
on
here.
the show.
They're awesome. They're some of our close friends. Love them very much.
Good guys.
So great. And that was just his baby. And that's what he was, had an emotional involvement in. So I still think they're great. And then Sage went on to kind of go do her own thing. And
along the way, you met Ryan Gosling.
Well, this was all before. Ryan Gosling was when I was really young. So that was before, I think that's when I was still in my two-piece. And that was such an LA funny thing to be a friend of a friend. It was my dad's assistant's kids were in this choir that sang backups, his band, Dead Man's Bones, amazing band, had a kids choir. And I guess they had an opening, looking for a couple more kids or something. So I just went to a rehearsal and they liked me and started singing with them. And what's really fucking crazy is now I have re-met two of the kids, Ruby and Cosmo, who were in that choir, who I didn't know at all when I was little. Somehow I was at my friend Claudia's house and they were over because they're family friends of her boyfriend's family. And they were over and we were all swimming. And somehow Dead Man's Bones came up and that choir came up and I realized that we were in the same choir at the same time and I can recognize them. I saw photos of them as kids. And
amazing.
Anyways, weird LA shit. That happened.
Did you ever meet Ryan since then? Or, I mean, did you ever but you were in the choir,
I saw him, I don't think since then, which is so funny because I just remember him being the sweetest, kindest person. And Zach, the other guy in the choir, I have seen since then. He was also wonderful. They were just so, so cool. But I didn't really understand who Ryan Gosling was. And then I think probably a year after not being in it, I watched The Notebook for the first time and I was like,
that's the guy.
I'm in love. I was like, oh my God, you're lying. I couldn't believe it. So yeah.
What's amazing is that you've had this whole career before you were 18, right?
I
you
know.
were in all these bands and the choir. But
it's really weird.
Really weird. And early on with The Regrets, I think a lot of the shows were house parties.
DIY tours, yeah.
DIY tours. So talk about that, the early days. I don't know if you ever reminisce about those days, touring in a van or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was just us and my dad's minivan. And we played a lot of shows with a lot of bands who were on Burger Records and Lollipop, and that's just the music that I was so into. So my big goal, which now I think is so funny, it was my huge goal was to get signed to Burger. I wanted to be part of that scene, that LA scene so bad because everyone in my high school was super into it and would go to these shows and I just wanted to be cool and be all these older dudes. And and then we got offered immediately a deal with Warner. And I obviously was well, this is sick, but I kind of wanted to be on Burger, which is so funny because it's oh my God. And then I got made fun of for being on Warner and being a sellout, whatever the fuck. And it's the high school jealousy and mentality, especially going to an art school of actually professionally doing what I was doing. Like I was really doing it. I was leaving and going on tour. And now I can look at it as an adult and be like, oh, kids were being mean because they were jealous. But at the time I was like, oh my God, like I'm not cool enough. I need to make punk me. Like, I don't know.
Well, even the Warner deal, how did that happen? Because obviously you're playing like parties and DIY tours.
Yeah.
But how did you? I know you had management at that point, but how did you come to get a deal?
So weird and so quickly, so weirdly, so fast. So Marley and I, my two-piece band, we put out an EP we had so many of these demos that we made, and we put out an EP, and I kind of honestly sort of manipulated the situation, not gonna lie, because there was this song called The Living Human Girl that I wrote. This is actually a very funny story. And she didn't want to admit it, but she would avoid playing it at shows. She didn't like it. And I think it's because I was talking about like stretch marks on my ass and having little boobs and like all these things that were like very intense, but for me, I thought was awesome to be talking about. And I think it made her uncomfortable, which is really fair, but she never really, we didn't talk about it. So at shows and shit, she would just like go on to play the next song. And we would like beef over this song.
On stage?
I feel like there were definitely times where she would like stop and I was like, oh, wrong song. And I would start like, whatever, little petty 12-year-old, 13-year-old me. Both of us were kids, by the way. So like no one was in the right or wrong here. But so there was this song. So we couldn't decide on what 4 songs we were going to put on this EP because it was like the only music that we were putting out because we wanted to have like a new sound that was more like surf rock, whatever.
By the way, I'm assuming your dad was helping to guide you because how do you know how to put out an EP at 12 years old, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
he totally was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, how about this? This is my master plan, which thank God, it's kind of fucked up, but thank God I did this. I was like, I have an idea. We can't agree. You get to pick 2. I get to pick 2. Because I knew she wouldn't admit that she didn't want a Living Human Girl to go on it. So I picked that and some other song, and she picked her too. And I was like, okay, these are the songs. And she was like, okay. So we put out this EP. Thank God we did, though, because of that song. There was this story that was written about us, and I think it was called Grimy Goods, which was like some LA blog. And they wrote about a show they saw. Brett, who used to be our day-to-day manager, saw it and listened to A Living Human Girl. And because of that song, brought us to our old manager, Kimberly, and was like, this band's sick. We should work with them. And literally because of that song, we started working with Kimberly. And then immediately she brought us to Mike Elizondo, who signed us to Warner within like, I want to say the same 2 weeks I met her.
Amazing.
Which is insane. But I'm like, wow, my little fucked up 13-year-old manipulative asshole self, it worked. It wasn't that manipulative, honestly. It was smart.
But no showcasing. You didn't have to go and play for the label executives. They just signed you on the strength of that
pretty much
song,
that
EP.
song. And then I went in and I met Mike, and I think I sat and played some of my songs on guitar. And that was like on a Wednesday. And then on a Friday, we went to Patty's in Burbank or in Toluca Lake. And he offered me a record deal.
Amazing.
Yep.
So Brooke, Drew, yourself, you go on to make 2 records.
Yep.
And now this is actually your 3rd record with the band. And I think that I would say decidedly the first 2 records are a bit more punky.
Totally.
This record has an incredible, the production of this record is incredible. In fact, I know that you worked with one of the producers who's done U2 before. And you can just, the songs are so hooky and
Thank
so
you.
great. But let's talk about how coming up to this point, because between now and then you've also done Coachella, Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
This year you did Kimmel, right? So talk to me up kind of to this point of this particular record, Further Joy, because I know that Joshua Tree was also a big part of the writing process, and we can't forget the pandemic during this whole thing too.
Yeah. So this album, I mean, it was really based in our ability to make it the way we made it was really based in the pandemic, because there was so much time for me to get bored and start writing with other writers, because I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to have sessions or write with other people. I was so weird and again, that high school self of being like, I don't want to sell out and be like every other artist on a major. And it's like, shut up. So to my older self, I realized that I love working with other people, and I love collaborating. And also, the best stuff comes from like letting go of whatever rules you have. So that was a rule I had, and I was like, fuck it, let's break it. And if I don't like it, I never have to do it again. So I got so bored with my own ideas and writing alone on my couch with my acoustic guitar during the pandemic that I started doing Zoom writing sessions. And it was fucking awesome because I just was like, oh my God, I don't have to be the only, like, I don't have to be taking all this weight upon myself. Because I would write also, the rest of my band, they're all incredible songwriters. It's just a different dynamic the way that we write together. So
you end up working with Michelle Buzz.
Yes, who I love so much. And yeah, so that really changed my view on it. And then it also having so much time where we weren't in rooms together as a band and we weren't touring, there was just so much time to like think that we had a finished product and then to push it and keep going and keep going. And we were writing up until, I mean, Nowhere, one of the songs on the album, which is one of my favorites, was written when the album, we already thought we had the album. And yeah, so I think that we just had so much room to play and explore. And we worked with Tim Pagnotta and Jackknife Lee, who are both just producers who know, they're just so fucking good at what they do. And they're so good at like finding that balance between becoming a friend and really having there be this sense of family in the studio, while also making sure like you're getting shit done when you don't even realize you're getting shit done. So like with Jackknife, we would just sit there and be playing all day. It felt like playing, literally like playing around. And then the next day you'd come in and he'd be like, look what I worked on with what we had. And it'd be like, what the fuck? Like, we did that? And he's like, yeah. We're like, okay.
I guess we should also mention along the way, this is the second lineup of the band, right? So
yes.
How did this come into existence too?
So when we formed as the original Regrets with the four of us, after Max and Sage left, like I talked about earlier, first it was Max and Drew we found through Mike. We actually technically found Brooke and Drew through kind of just mutual friends of Mike. And I mean, the second that we met Drew, it was just like game over. Like, this kid is like just a little angel. Like, as a human, he's my best friend. Like, I love that man so much. But also as a drummer, it's just like one of those moments that you don't think exists, and it just really feels like magic in a room. And it felt the same way with Brooke, where when we tried, because you have to have like a chemistry read, 100%. You know? And it was just like, oh shit, this is so cool. Because it's so, that's the scariest shit ever, is like going into that and not knowing what that's going to look like. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Well, the chemistry is amazing in the band. There's a funny story you kind of mentioned to me, because when this record first started, there was something to do with mushrooms and writing this record. So talk to me about how you wrote this record. And by the way, the name of the record, you know, Further Joy, it really is about achieving the unachievable, you know, chasing joy and you know, the concept of perfection, right?
Yes,
so
totally.
Talk to me about that along with the mushroom story.
Yes, okay. So like I said, a lot of the beginning of the writing process with the album was me in my house writing with other songwriters. And I really wanted to make sure that this wasn't a Lydia record. I wanted it to be a Regrets album. I wanted all of us to feel involved and connected with whatever we were writing. So, and the thing is even songs that I was writing first with other people, they come in and add their own flavor and whatnot later on. But I wanted us really bad to go on a trip, and our whole team thought it was a good idea. Let's go rent a house in Joshua Tree where there's nothing that we like. Let's get somewhere where we can do nothing else besides write and reconnect as a group, because we also hadn't spent time together in so long. So,
and you have a history, by the way, with Joshua Tree too,
yes,
right?
Yes. My dad owns or used to own a kind of trailer park hotel there. So I grew up going there and doing open mic there. And Joshua Tree is just a very special place to me. And so I was like, we're going to Joshua Tree. I'm renting us a house. Let's go for 10 days, which now I'm like, holy shit, that's a long time. Yeah. So we went for 10 days. And mainly in my head, I was like, let's try to write, but also like that might not work if we put pressure on that. So let's more just try and listen through all the demos that I've written, talk about what this album means to us. Let's talk visuals, let's brainstorm. And we did all of that. But also we wrote 10 songs in 10 days. We kept writing and writing and writing. And one of the things we said we would do is finally, I had never really tripped on mushrooms, and all of them had. And they were into microdosing. I know that Brooke and Drew were. I had taken mushrooms once in high school at this show, and I like drank someone's orange juice with mushrooms in it, but like very much just felt like silly, goofy high.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want to actually like do it. I've never done psychedelics in that way of like I'm seeing shit. And I was like, this sounds like a great environment. Maybe we'll write cool music. Maybe we won't. And we had like a place to get them that we knew they'd be super safe. And we brought like a scale and we like chopped it all up and did the whole measuring thing to make sure we were all taking the exact same amount or knew how much we were taking.
It was like a mushroom dealer in Joshua Tree that you knew or something.
No. It was actually just a friend of, okay. I think, of Drew's who was growing them. But
we won't incriminate him.
We won't incriminate him. But we kept, I think all of us were getting kind of nervous and we kept being like, oh, we don't want to do it this day. Like, we'll do it later. Finally, there was a day we woke up, and I think the day before the last day, and we were like, I think this is the day. I think today is shroom day. And so we do the whole thing, take the shrooms, we go on a walk, and I'm just like doing the classic story of like, I don't feel anything. Like, should I take more? Like, I don't really feel anything. They're like, no, just wait. I start seeing Janessa getting a little weirded out and is like, I'm going to go back to the house. Like, I'm going to go back. And I was like, okay, cool. They go back. I'm still like, dude, like they're feeling something and I'm not. Like, what's going on? Brooke, Drew, and I are like, okay, we'll also go back. Let's all go back to the house. And then right when we're like walking through the driveway, I look up and I just start hysterically laughing and crying. And I'm like, whoa, like, okay, it's happening. Okay. And then so then I go and I sit outside on this deck and I'm like looking at the plants and they're doing the breathing thing. And I'm like, holy fuck, this, no one was like gaslighting me and lying and being like, you're going to feel something and you won't. I was like, this is crazy. Started to get a little panicky and I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm okay. I'm just going to go inside and chill in my room because Brooke also was like, oh, okay. So Drew and Janessa were like, we need to go like climb, like we need to be outside. And I was like, that sounds like a lot. I'm not going to do that.
On a cactus.
And Brooke is like a total flower child and is like outside, like singing and fucking dancing. And I was like, that's too much for me. Like, okay, I can't. Like, okay, Brooke, go off. But like, no. So I was like, I'm just going to go lay in my bed and maybe write or something. And so I go in my room. And my room was the one that was closest to the kitchen and the living room. And the door's open. So it's just this little bed. And it's this weird fucking house. Like, weird TJ Maxx art, and like everything's beige and doesn't make any sense. And there's these
further
colorful,
adding to the experience of mushrooms.
Oh yeah. And so they put on these crazy colored lights outside of my room, and then they start blasting Enya. Like, it sounded like the loudest music I'd ever heard, but I just couldn't do anything. Like, I was like, okay, this is great, I guess. So it's like, come set away. It's like this crazy music. And I think I laid there for like 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
Just laying there, staring outside of the room, like all these colors were coming up on the walls and I was crying. And I wrote in my notebook. So I'm like literally like this vegetable. And I like grab my notebook and I write a little bit in it. And there's like shit dancing on the paintings in the room and I'm just alone here. And I write the funniest page. The best thing I wrote was, I was like, love is everything. And then I was like, this song has been playing forever. And Janessa ended up making me as like a birthday present this shirt that has like the date on it and has Enya, like a photo of Enya, and on the back it says the song has been playing forever. Just so awesome. But anyways, what ended up happening is I had a crazy, like, that changed my life. Like, truly, so cool. I will do that maybe like once a year because it was so heavy for me. Like, I think that was super therapeutic, and I think it's beautiful what it can do, but like so intense. And um and yeah, they came back in the house, or I started getting really worried at the end of it, and I went into Brooke's room because she was in there, and I was like, are they back yet? Like, where are they? And I was like, should we call them? Like, oh no. And right when I started getting worried because they weren't back, they like walked in the doors, and it was like, you guys. And we all started crying and like having this crazy moment. And then we went in the hot tub and ate ice cream. And I think we watched Mary Poppins, which did not like stand the test of time for me.
Especially on mushrooms.
Weird
right?
ass movie. Yeah, especially coming down from shrooms.
Yeah. But you did have a dance party along the way.
Oh yeah, we had multiple dance parties.
That was not on the mushrooms.
That
right?
was actually not on the mushrooms, which is so funny. That was sober, I'm pretty sure.
That's funny. Well, along the way, you wrote this incredible record. So 10 songs in 10 days. And I'm assuming the mushrooms played into some of the lyrical content at some point, right? Maybe.
I think a little bit. Because the next day, I feel like we kind of finished up some songs, so it must have in some way.
Well, talk to me about the idea of Further Joy and the concept behind it.
Yeah.
Again, it is about chasing happiness and the constant need. And I think social media even plays a part of what that is too.
100%. For Further Joy to me, well, first off, it came from my friend Mikey, and I were writing, and he was reading this book called Further Joy, which now I've read and I love. But there was something that just stuck with me about that phrase and how much I felt like that just sort of summarized this feeling I'd been having that I couldn't put words to, which was just this idea of this like constant joy that didn't exist here but existed over there. And how do I chase it? How do I get to it? How do I find the perfect version of it? And it's just a whole lot of bullshit because that doesn't exist and it never will. And like the only thing you have is now, which I know everyone knows this, but like being in the present, it's so hard, but that is what joy is. Like that is what true joy is. And not even just true joy, like just living is being in the present and letting those feelings exist while still coming back to yourself and to being grateful to be alive. And I think that for so long I couldn't find that. And I was just so anxious and so depressed because I wasn't doing good enough at being happy. Like, what is that? Like, why do we do that to ourselves? It's so silly in retrospect.
It is true. We're constantly chasing happiness. And I think social media, as we mentioned, doesn't help when you see everyone's perfect life.
Comparing to everyone. And it's just what does it do?
And I always call social media like people's like greatest hits because no one's posting their dark moments.
Exactly. I try to. I try to mix it up because I'm like, but it's rare that you see that. And even for me, like my version of that is not the like raw version, it's calculated and it's
Well, it's interesting because there are so many hooks on this record, and it is primarily a really happy record, but yet lyrically it goes into some dark places.
Fucked up.
So let's talk a little bit about that because I know at some point you don't really mind taking on characters to write and other people's perspectives, right? So some of the best songs on the record, which seem super happy in the end, they're about eating disorders, they're about just finding yourself, vulnerability, sexuality, and ultimately, like, a lot of the songs sound so happy that you would never know that lyrically they're coming from a dark place.
Yeah, and I feel like that was something we wanted to achieve and was kind of happening naturally because it just represented what I was going through, was this like, I need to show up. I need to smile, and I need to be a good partner. I need to be a good friend. I need to be a good kid to my parent. Like all these things I need to prove to the people around me that I'm working hard enough. And like on the inside, I just was not okay. Not okay. And I think that sonically we wanted to emulate that. And I think we did a really good job of that. And then also just the feeling of I love dancing through pain, and like I wanted our shows to be a space where people could belt lyrics that they connected with and could cry to, could scream to, can laugh to, while also dancing with people around them and kind of there's something so beautiful. I think the most beautiful thing is being at a show and being in a community of people where you can celebrate these traumatic things that you're dealing with, you know, because that's all we have is that sort of connection with each other.
Yeah, well, songs like Barely on My Mind, Anxieties, even You're So Fucking Pretty,
Yeah.
they do not leave your head once they get into your head.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, amazing songs. Talk to me a little bit about the lyrics on You're So Fucking Pretty, because it's a great song. But again, this was about being really vulnerable for you, right?
So this is one that we actually wrote in Joshua Tree. And it's funny because when we wrote it, the demo was very much like a dance song. And then Tim, who produced it, Tim and Brian, they were like, this song's like, let's like lean into how melancholy and sad this is. And we were like, you're so right. Let's do it. But yeah, it was the first time I ever really talked about my sexuality. And also the first time that Janessa Brooke and I ever really talked that open, which is so crazy now because since then, like, we've somehow just gotten so much closer. It's hard to remember a time that wasn't so talked about. But I think for me, I've been in so many relationships with men and boys, like back to back. I've been very much hopped through relationships with guys that I didn't know how to. I felt like imposter syndrome almost in the feelings that I had had towards women and just people in general. And it took me a really long time to recognize that. And so when we were in Joshua Tree, we just started talking about kind of crushes and unrequited crushes. And I was going back and looking back at high school. And I have this friend who I'm still really good friends with now, who I one night, like fucking blackout drunk, was like, I'm in love with you. And I'm like, that was so horrible that I had to be blackout drunk to like
to say it, yeah.
To say it.
And
I didn't
vulnerable.
And I didn't know. Like I didn't know that I was feeling that. And then I said that and I woke up the next day and be like, oh my God, like I'm so sorry. Like that wasn't true. That wasn't true. Like to my friends who I told about it. And I was like, it wasn't even true. Like I was lying. And then a few months later, I was like, that was very true. Like I definitely like had a lot of like, maybe I wasn't in love, but there was so much like love and feelings that were there. And I just never knew how to express it. And so, yeah. And I think so many people go through that, like so many people. And it wasn't a lack of support from family or my friends or anything. It's just internal guilt and shame from other trauma or other situations that, you know, can fester in that way. And it's hard to talk about. And then you talk about it and you're like, oh, great, done, cool. Like
it's cathartic, it's therapeutic to get it out there for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great track. And there are some incredibly fun moments on the record, like Monday, and we were just talking about the dance party. It's funny that you were having this dance party in your house in Palm Springs and there was like a noise complaint.
Yes.
Because like who's around the houses in Joshua Tree?
I don't know.
It's the desert. It's like
I don't know.
Right. But there was a noise complaint.
Yes. Yeah. Which was so funny because we were like, what the fuck? We just want to bombard Katy Perry. But there was a noise complaint.
And you have this incredible friend group, by the way. We didn't really mention it, but it's like Olivia Rodrigo. You were just at Billie Eilish's 21st birthday. So
yeah,
Olivia's in the video.
Yeah,
and you just called her and you were like, hey, come on in the video, be the DJ.
Yeah. She's amazing. I'm so lucky to have friends who I'm just so inspired by them, honestly. And like, they're just fucking cool ass people, just like all my other friends, you know?
Where'd you meet Billie, by the way?
I actually met Billie in high school. It's like 6-7 years ago or something. We had a mutual friend who now we're both not friends with, but we had a mutual friend and she came to one of my shows, like early regret shows when it was Max Sage, like all of us. And she'd only put out Ocean Eyes, I think, and I just thought she was so cool. We lived close to each other, and it was literally like months later, she just fucking blew up, and it was crazy. And then we rekindled our friendship later because I became close with Phineas and Claudia, and who's her brother, and and so we just had so many like funny things to talk about from high school and stuff, and she's just she's incredible. She's
It's
awesome.
amazing to see how you're all doing well, right? It's like, and
Yeah.
you're this friend group from being teenagers, which is
wild.
pretty
It's
wild.
crazy.
And this past year, by the way, we can't not talk about the fact that you did things like Coachella, Lollapalooza. 2022 was a huge year for you.
I can't believe that was this last year. It
Yeah.
feels like forever ago. Like it feels because we haven't toured in a while. I'm like, did we do that? Like that was us? Yeah, it was.
And let's not forget Mike Cam at the Forum.
Yes.
Huge.
Which was also really recent, but that felt like a fever dream of a situation because that was like being backstage at the Forum, I think was the trippiest part. That was crazy.
So when you think about the past year and what a huge year it was for you, and you talk about, you collaborated with Gerard Way and things like that. I mean, were those the highlights for you? Was it Coachella? Because that's always like the dream gig when you're young. You're like, I got to play Coachella or Lollapalooza.
Yeah. Coachella and Lolla are two of my favorite. They're probably my two favorite festivals. And we played them both before. So I think going back to Coachella and being able to like do it now and do it with this record was really incredible. That was definitely a highlight. Weekend 2 especially was such a highlight. I mean, I think there's like the way that it felt to put out this album and the response to this album was my highlight because it was just so freeing to do something that felt really risky for us. It felt really scary to put out a pop album, essentially. And it wasn't scary at all. And now it just feels so freeing to be writing music because we can do whatever we want,
It's so great to see the growth of the band because decidedly, the first few records were definitely a bit more punk.
Totally.
And just to hear how the band has grown and the songwriting and the production, it's all so great. So definitely pick the new record. Actually, the record actually just came out with 3 new tracks in November.
Yes.
So we should talk about that for a moment because the record came out in April, but these 3 new tracks came out in November.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things for me that I told our management when we were choosing songs. I was like, yes, I will narrow down, but these songs have to come out because they're some of my favorites and it just made more sense not living in that like body. And so, Answer is one that Mikey, who's my friend who had the book Further Joy, him and I wrote over Zoom, and that's like one of my favorite songs I've ever written. There's something about the lyric. That's probably my favorite lyrics on the whole album, which is crazy. Dummy, which is one that's just so fucking fun, and I want to play it live. Like, I can't wait. And then Shapeshifter is one that was also about like body dysmorphia and all that, but like in the most chaotic, sonic way, fun way. Again, I want to play all of them live so bad, so we'll have to really choose. But yeah.
Well, you're getting ready to embark on this 29-day tour with Youngblood, who's a friend of the show, and we've done some work together in the past. I love Dom. So you excited about that?
I'm so excited. We got to actually meet him briefly after when he did those 3 LA, when he did like the Sunset Strip thing.
He did like 10 shows in 8 hours or something.
It was insane. So we went to the last one, I think at the Roxy, and then went to the after party and got to meet him. And just like from talking to him for 5 minutes, I was like, okay, we made the right choice doing this tour. Like, this guy is so warm, and I feel like I'm a good judge of character.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. But
he's got a lot of energy.
Yeah. But it feels genuine. And I think a lot of times you meet someone who's like super intense and high energy, and it can feel like a bit of a character. And he just actually seems like he really is that way. And
he lives it and he breathes it. And he's amazing.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's awesome. So the tour actually kicks off in Seattle. It goes all the way up to, I think, August 4th in St. Charles. Any highlights that you're really looking forward to? Because I know it takes you through like Canada, Vegas, Texas, even New York. So
I'm really excited for New York, and I think we're doing the LA show, and that's just going to be awesome because whenever we get to play LA, it's so fun. But I think I'm really excited about playing in cities that we maybe haven't had the best experience in, to like make new fans there and meet new people and see what it's like,
It's always great to see when you're playing bigger and bigger venues, and you know that there's traction with the record. So I think this is going to be a great tour for you. I'm actually really excited for you to do this. So
I'm stoked. I'm so excited. You got to come to one of the shows.
100%. Further Joy is an amazing record.
Thank
so
you.
I appreciate you coming on. One last question I wanted to ask you. We ask a lot of people.
Yes.
5 records that every music fan should own, according to Lydia Knight.
Okay. Yes. So I have to say every person should own and not favorite, because if I say these are my 5 favorite albums, then I'm going to overthink it for weeks. 5 albums, though, that come to mind that I think everyone should have and listen to. London Calling, Clash.
Classic.
Lemonade by Beyonce. Number 1 record, Big Star. Absolutely by Dijon, which was my favorite album of this past year. And Blue, Joni Mitchell.
Amazing. I thought you were going to throw the 1975 in there somewhere.
I know, I would have. But again, I'm not saying favorites. I'm saying like, I think these are just albums that are essential to me right now.
Definitely. Where is the LA show, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll look it up.
Wait, I think it's the Palladium.
Okay.
But I might be wrong.
Well, I do live next door to the Palladium.
So I hope. Okay.
I will definitely be going to Further Joy, the new edition out now.
Yeah.
Lydia, it's so great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Happy New Year. I was told that you
too.
can't say Happy New Year after like January 7th.
Why not?
I don't know. Larry David said anything after January 7th.
Well, it's on 7th. Happy New Year.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Happy fucking New Year.
Happy fucking New Year. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to work with you.
I know, me too.
I'm excited to
stoked.
get into everything. And the record is one of my favorite records this year.
Thank you,
So
Scott.
congrats
That's
on an
so
incredible
nice.
piece of work.
Thank you. This was awesome.
All right. See you soon.
Thank you. Yeah.